Today we're going to hear from a special guest, Aaron. He's in my favorite city in Mexico, and he's living on $658 a month, and he makes $2,000 a month online. Let's hear what Aaron has to say. So this is Dan of Vagabond Awake, and today we're lucky to have Aaron on the channel. Well, for reasons that I'm going to ask questions, and Aaron's going to tell you why I'm happy to have him on the channel. Aaron, welcome to the channel.
Thank you.
So Aaron,
thank you very much, Dan.
Where are you sitting right now, and how long have you been there?
Right now, I am sitting in the city of Queretaro. Right. I have a 5-room apartment here in Queretaro. I'm about a 5-minute walk from the El Centro.
Wow. And
I have been in Mexico for 11 years and almost 6 months.
Wow. You've moved to what I consider a beautiful country. You're in one of my favorite, actually it is my favorite city of Mexico for a non-beach city. It's at a higher elevation. It's cooler, beautiful restaurants. And as you mentioned, you're in Centro, which is, I mean, I've walked around Centro at 2, 3 o'clock in the morning, and it's beautiful and safe and fun. There's nightclubs and restaurants, and I just love that city. And so you're living the dream, in my opinion. And it's a colonial era city with the cobblestone streets and the cathedrals and the park in the center. It's just really, it's a charming place. And so tell us a little bit about that and what your thoughts are about Querétaro.
Well, Querétaro is, I mean, it's a magical place. To be very honest with you, of all the colonial cities that I have been to, it just so happens there's only one other place in Mexico, but it's a little bit too small for my taste, and that's San Miguel de Allende, which you know is only about an hour away from Querétaro. But it's a little bit too small for me. I need a little bit more action going on. But the people here in Querétaro, they have to be the kindest, most easygoing people you'd want to meet. As you said, the colonial center, I have left a bar with a little bit of a buzz, and it was like 2:30 in the morning, and a Mexican woman, a young Mexican woman, walked up to me, and because of my gray hair, and said, "Let me help you to a taxi." And you know, how can you not want to in a place? I mean, the temperature outside right now is like 82 degrees. The breeze is blowing. How can you? I mean, you talk about the Centro, you know, the many cafes. You can sit down and have a cappuccino with a croissant and just enjoy life, which I'm sorry to say you can't do that very much back home anymore.
It's true. It's certainly not without, I don't know, I would, in the past I would say without a bucket of money, but now it's more like a wheelbarrow full of money in the US to live the same kind of life you can live in other parts of the world now. Querétaro wanted being one of the best. It's just, you just can't do it anymore. And with inflation coming and fear of, AI and all that, it seems like it's a smart move to do what you're doing, which is to make more than you need so you can bank a little each month. And then if things get a little crazy in the next, 3 to 5 or 10 years, you'll have a little bit there on the side, more than you would have had, that you can protect yourself from. And even if things inflate, they're not likely to inflate to U.S. prices. So it sounds like you've got yourself in a really good position there, and you're close into the central area. Unbelievable. That's amazing.
Just to tell you the specifics maybe a little bit. On the expense side, my expenses this month, and people are going to going to, their eyes are gonna go like this.
Yeah,
No, he didn't do that. But you know better. My full expenses, all in, $657.80.
Wow. Love
My
it.
rent is $230 a month,
Wow.
including all utilities and internet.
Wow. Wow. And did you bring your furniture or does that include furniture too?
That includes a completely furnished place.
Wow.
I didn't have to spend a dime on furniture. Not
Amazing.
a dime.
Amazing.
Food. I'm a foodie, which I think you are as well.
Yeah.
I spend about $200 a month, and I don't scrimp. I go to Walmart, and I do the local markets mostly for my fruits and vegetables,
Yes.
but I like to indulge myself if people don't mind me saying I happen to be Jewish and I cannot give up my bagels and cream cheese. So my transportation all in, and this is taking Ubers and taxis, $45 a month. I do have a couple of small health issues, but the medicines come to $7.90 a month, and I have 3 pills I have to take a day. I try to do that in the United States.
Hey, good point. What would you say those 3 pills would cost you per month instead of $45 if you bought them in the US? Most people don't know that difference, if you know.
Well, actually, $7. The 45 is transportation.
Oh,
The
sorry.
it's $7.90 for 3 pills.
Okay, okay.
I would say from what it used to cost 11 years ago, those same pills were costing me about $185 a month. Instead, I'm paying
Yeah.
$7.90 a month here. Eating out, like I said, I'm a foodie, so I spend between $175 and $200 a month going out to some of those restaurants you mentioned in El Centro.
Yeah, yeah. Wow, what a great bunch of restaurants and great choices you have. And that is, you really are living it up to spend that much in restaurants. You're enjoying yourself there, which is great to hear. And on that budget, mind blowing, just mind blowing that you're doing
It,
650
it
out the door. Wow.
it's crazy, and the thing, I'm mainly being paid. I used to be paid in dollars, but about 6 months ago, I saw the way the dollar was headed,
Yeah,
and I told all my customers, pay me in pesos. So as the dollar's value has been going down,
yeah.
my money's value has been going up. Just to mention, a year ago, it was 23 pesos to the dollar. This morning, when I checked, it was 17.8 to the dollar.
Wow, nice raise you gave yourself there. Nice raise.
Mm-hmm. And if it turns around again, I'll just ask, it's the same money. I'll just ask them to pay me in dollars again. All my customers are very reasonable people.
Yeah, that's great. That's great. And what about, you mentioned restaurants. What and you mentioned you have internet included. Do you carry around a smartphone? And what does that cost if you do?
Yes, I bought a Motorola T5 about 3 years ago for about $60. And I'm using the same phone. I talk about getting things cheap. The computer I'm using, $280 for an HP computer about a year ago.
That's great. So tell us, do you have health insurance, Aaron? How do you do that? I don't know if people know about that in Mexico.
Well, when I was working at the university, I had it through the National Health Insurance Scheme here in Mexico.
Right.
But as a self-employed person now, I'm now getting my health insurance still through the national insurance, but it is called 𝗵𝐵𝐺𝐴. It is for self-employed. There are two systems here in Mexico. One called 𝐸MS, where you pay through your employer pays to the national government.
Right.
And the 𝗵𝐵𝐺𝐴 one, in which you sign up individually, and you better sit down, Dan.
I'm sitting, Aaron. Don't worry.
Okay. When I was working at the university, I was paying an 8% of my salary in taxes. Included in that 8% was what it was costing me for my insurance. Right now, I'm paying $42 a month. I didn't include that in my expenses because it's taken directly out of my bank account.
Okay.
I don't even see it, but $42 a month. And at the end of every month, I get reimbursed for what I pay for my medicines. So even though I'm paying it out, I'm getting it back at the end of the month from the government, from the Mexican government. And when I go for the copay, when I have to go to the doctors every 6 months, my copay is $10.
$10.
Yeah, that's my expenses for medical.
So $42 a month, $10 copay. Now, does that mean they pay, 50% of and you pay the rest, or they pay 75? How much of the medical do they pay?
Well, a doctor's visit for the specialist that I have to go is $65 for a visit.
Right.
And like I said, I pay 10, they pay the 55.
Right. So if you went into the hospital and had a surgery, let's say that cost 10,000, would you have to pay the $10 copay, or would it be a higher percentage in that case?
It would be a $100 payment I would have to make. The rest of it would be paid for through 𝗵𝐵𝐺𝐴, through the government here.
Amazing. And that's great. And so do you have an experience with it? What's your feeling when you go in and see the services and how you're treated? How would you compare it to U.S. services?
Most of the doctors that I have had to deal with, they all speak English.
Right.
Almost all of them. And the services are top notch. You might, if you are going through 𝐸MS,
right?
Yeah, when you go through 𝐸MS and you have a problem, you will have to go into the clinic, and you might have to wait an hour or an hour and a half because you don't have an appointment. But that's the only real hiccup, you might say, within the system.
Wow, that's amazing. So tell us do you have a retirement visa there? Are you going on the visa runs? How is it you're staying in Mexico?
Okay. When I first came, the system has changed since I came.
Right.
When I originally came, you could come into the country on a tourist visa, which is what I did. I found a job teaching, and then the school sponsored me, and they switched my visa from tourist to the temporary resident visa. And then after 4 years through that temporary resident visa, I was eligible for permanent residency.
Right.
Now, today, you cannot come in with the tourist and get the visa changed in country. Now you have to set it up with the Mexican consulate outside of in your home country, and then you can come.
Right.
But I did it through working, and it's only a 4-year program. And then I recently looked up what the permanent residency cost. It's 4,180 pesos, or a little bit over $200 now to get your permanent residency.
Right.
People make the mistake to think that it's only through economic solvency that they can come into Mexico. And I don't know why they make that mistake. People go to the embassies and they find out that they can't come into Mexico as a temporary or permanent because of economic solvency. But if they were to come as a tourist, find a job, get sponsored, then they could go back. It would take them about 10 days to get the paperwork done at the consulate, and then they can come back. I started my own business, my own teaching business online.
Right.
And I've been doing it now for about 3 months.
Right.
And it's taken off.
Well, that's another great story. On my channel, we have people who are trying to retire overseas in paradise locations, Mexico, Southeast Asia, Central or South America. And some of them want to make just a little bit more money. So why don't you tell us a little bit about what you do in your business and what you make? Because you're doing it online. And that's, to me, that's the gold standard.
Okay. Well, I'll just tell you what happened the last 2 months.
Okay.
I teach English ESL online, and I also do translation online. Okay. I can translate from English to German and from English to Hebrew.
Okay.
And so I have a small side business in translation. Like, if you don't mind, as I'm getting older, I have to use my magnifier. Last month, I made $1,615 from online teaching and $580 with translation, to roughly $2,200 last month, or 39,455 pesos for the month. The month before, I made 2,120 and 38,104, pesos.
So you're making three times what you need to survive with your online business. And you said you've only been doing it for a few months. Is that right?
And for 3 months, yes.
That's crazy. So the next question I have is, we'll split these in two. I'll start with the first. You're teaching English online. Are you on one of the portals? Will they supply you with the students? Or you have your own
half
sort of...
half my business is through Open English.
Okay.
I don't know if you've ever heard of them.
That's one I haven't heard of. So would they find that by Googling the words Open English?
Yes, if they put Open English, they will go directly to the Open English website.
Okay, half from that. And the other half?
The other half, I have built up a fairly large group of friends, Mexican friends here in Mexico. And through that network, I'm getting the other half of my income from teaching. And then my translation, I've been able to contact various translation services online, and I'm listed in their certified group that can do the translation. And when work comes up, they contact me.
Okay, there's various, I don't know if you know this or not, but there's various services out there where you can advertise these kind of specialized businesses. One of them is called Upwork, where you can put your profile up, and when people, they'll ask for someone who can translate, in the case you mentioned, from English to German or English to Hebrew. And then when people ask for requests for translation, you can put a bid on work, or they can contact you directly, or once they use you. So are you using
Actually,
Upwork kind of
Upwork
thing?
is one of the groups that I work with.
Okay, and Upwork is spelled just like sounds
Yeah,
UPWORK,
all together. Yeah.
all together, one word. And great. And so is there another way you also get translation work, another portal or website, or how?
There's a company called Vinyys, VINYS. They are a IT and sort of a all in one house for international corporations to consult for different types of things, including language translation, teaching, all sorts of stuff.
Great, great. Now, so that's the translation stuff. And what about English? You mentioned you have friends. Are they finding you through existing students, someone you've already helped? And by the way, you mentioned the word ESL. For those who don't know, ESL stands for English as a Second Language.
Second language, yes.
So is it coming through sort of organic traffic from people that are happy with your teaching, the other part of it? Or
It's mostly organic traffic. Some of it, like I just picked up 3 students a couple of days ago. One of my students that I teach through Open English didn't thought that Open English was a little bit too expensive, and his sister and two of his sister's friends who are living in Veracruz here in Mexico, they wanted to improve their English. So during one of our classes, he said to me, "Would you mind teaching them?"
Great.
So, organic stuff like that. I just picked up $200 extra a month starting in June with that.
Well, that's great. So you may not be in the same city as them. You may never meet them. How do they pay you if they're not through one of the portals?
The way they do it is, well, for people who are here in Mexico, I give them my 𝗓𝗄, my inter-Mexico transfer number, and they just go to a local edition of my bank, and they just deposit the money right at the bank.
Okay. And do you have customers outside of Mexico do they use PayPal, or how do they pay?
Usually through my PayPal account.
Okay, good. So there's more ideas to make money and how to get paid. That's really great. A few $100s can make a big difference for people. And so it's great. Is there anything else you want to share about your new business? For example, if someone needs translation work, there's bound to be somebody on this listening, or someone has a friend that wants to learn English. How do they contact you directly? Can I put a link here?
They can send an email to 𝗂𝐿272@gmail.com.
Perfect. I'll put that right on the screen, and I'll put it in the link below the video too.
I come from Boston, Massachusetts, and if you've ever been there, Boston is one of the top 3 most expensive places in the United States. I was paying $1,600 and change per month for a 1-bedroom apartment
11 years ago.
in one of the inner suburbs.
Right.
And if you know anything about our subway system and transportation system, it stinks. I have traveled a lot. My father worked for the United States Navy as a civilian. And every summer for about 2 decades, we used to fly to Europe, move around Europe while my father was inspecting ships. So I've had the travel bug all my life.
Wow. What a great experience.
I don't know how Uncle Sam paid for a family of four for 3.5 months every summer, but he did.
Yeah. Well, your dad probably knew what he was doing. What he was doing in those inspections probably saved the government much, much more than to move the family around, I would think.
Yes, my father was an electronics mechanic. He dealt with sonar and radar on naval vessels, installation and repair. And if you don't mind indulging me just a little bit, when my father retired from federal service, he was the most senior guy in that field in the entire country. But that was back when you could have a family, when you could own property, and he never made more than $45,000 a year. He owned a 12-room house just outside of Boston, and he owned a 2-bedroom condo down in Florida. Try to do that today in our country.
Well, plus 45,000, that long ago was actually a little bit of money. So, I mean, it wasn't like now. It's almost minimum. It's not minimum wage, but it's probably just on the bottom side of middle class, maybe even the top of below middle, who knows?
Yeah.
Who knows? Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, so you got a great start. Often I have a friend who says I have itchy feet. I have to keep moving all the time. You got a great start at your vagabond life, if you will, in summers as growing up. That's a great story.
Well, also, before I came to Mexico, I taught in Saudi Arabia. I was in Riyadh for a year.
Okay.
The problem there is the place is so stifling, I couldn't stay more than a year, even though I made $70,000 teaching and no taxes.
Right. Yeah. I know what you mean. I've been through the Middle East several times, and there's some fun stuff to do around there, but it doesn't feel right for long term for me. It's okay for a visit, but I like other parts of the world more, even though it has great food and some interesting things, some crazy tall buildings, like in Dubai and some of these places.
If you've ever been in Dubai.
Yeah. I want to say thanks for coming on the channel. It's really great information you shared. A lot of people that can use this information. I really appreciate you coming on and taking the time to share that with us. Really appreciate it.
No problem. I hope to talk to you again in the future. It's always nice to talk to a kindred spirit, someone who is adventurous at heart.
Click the link in the notes below this video for Google Map links, reports, and other information. There you will also see our Retire Cheap in Paradise catalog, how we pay for our travels, and my free ebook, How I Fired My Boss and Traveled the World for 14+ years.